Absolutely my pleasure to being here on stage in Stuttgart and with Plug and Play Startup Autobahn. First time for us, great to be here. As mentioned, my name is Tobias Helbig. I'm managing the innovation within NXP Semiconductors in CDO. And we already had a great presentation by Alessandro on the importance of semiconductors. What we see, semiconductors is driving great breakthroughs over the past decades. With this excessive increase in performance, we see entirely new value chains, we see entirely new products. Layer on top of that, AI, which is a huge wave coming in, take safety, take security. We have tons of drivers which are extremely interesting and relevant for innovation. On top, it's us, being always online, being individual, having our phones in our hands, always connected. And around us then, the mega trends, the big cities, demographic changes, climate changing, scarcity of resources, which ultimately is driving a lot of the innovation needs in our environment. In the context of all of that backdrop, we have a huge wave building under the heading of Secure Edge. If you look at the waves of semiconductors, say in my early days while studying, I was happy to buy myself a nice computer. At some moment became a laptop. The next wave was that the whole consumer electronics industry got into upheaval. And then we are where we are pretty much still today, that we have the mobile phones are in our hands, driving a huge growth of semiconductors in the whole world, as well as in the backdrop of that, the whole data centers, streaming, which goes with that, and so on. The thing ahead of us is the next growth wave, and that's going to be based on the secure edge, where everything is smart. The connected devices, the factories, the homes, the cars, very much relevant in this context. There was recently a news article going around that in 2030 the semiconductors industry will hit a turnover of 1 trillion. And from my side at least, I've given up doubting those kind of forecasts. So it's a very exciting time which we have ahead of us here. What is driving that wave? It is ultimately edge processing, so a lot of the intelligence moving into the devices which we have in our hands, in our homes, or which are our mobile devices, the cars. So there's literally an explosion of the number of those devices. There's a prediction of north of 75 billion connected devices. Thanks, Alessandro, for the very good presentation on what's the market demand in the automotive market. Electrification being a key trend here. Assistance coming in more and more cars with ever more sophistication, and ultimately always multipliers which drive the semiconductors contents. Go beyond that, communication moves on from G to G to G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next one, 6 is also coming with a lot of interesting new possibilities. AI, I think, still one of the mega trends driving compute performance. If you look at the technical side for that, then fundament is clearly safety and security. Especially security. I don't think that we would trust devices which we use in case they are not secure. So absolutely a fundament. The other one also not to be underestimated is the whole topic of power consumption. The slide mentions ultra-low power. That's the stuff you ultimately find in your battery-powered or not even battery-powered devices, where of course power consumption is critical just to be able to use the device itself. But also for kind of center stage stuff like data centers, power consumption is massively a topic because with this growth of the electronics, the consumption itself is going up like hell. And as a consequence, we have to do something about it, which drives very much then the innovation needs as the next step. If you take 10 miles high, a view on these edge devices coming up, they have a nice technology foundation which you can use as a pattern. They always follow the pattern sense, think, connect, act. First is that you would like to sense your environment. That can be your thermostat, that can be your LiDAR system or radar system in a car, that can be other sensing modalities which we have to basically get connected into our analog environment. Next thing is the thinking, the processing of the data which is there to derive meaningful conclusions out of that. So very much a driver for processing, very much a driver for smartness as well as learning. All of that is overlaid with being connected. The devices with each other, laterally, the devices into the cloud. Again, major element in all of those edge devices. And lastly, it's about acting, having something happening in real world, in the analog world, and where ultimately a lot of that is about being efficient with a minimum amount of energy, getting the effect which you want to have. As I mentioned before, and I'd like just to re-emphasize that again and again, foundation underneath is safety and security. We want to be sure that the devices perform their duties even in malicious environments. We want to make sure that even if whatever electronics breaks, nothing goes wrong. So safety is absolutely a mandatory requirement. Within this context, I am looking at innovation, driving innovation in a semiconductors company. And sure, you can imagine that this is very, very interesting, given all the dynamics from the technology base as well as within our environment. We have quite some extensive programs running under the heading long-term innovation programs, where we're looking at, say, the needs, the differentiators, say 4 to 8 years out, where we look at what kind of, say, solutions do we need to be successful with our future products. We are running those programs on a yearly basis. We are interacting a lot with universities to gain access to the latest knowledge, latest results, and be able to utilize them. Part of our ecosystem and tool set is as well interacting into the startup landscape as of today already. Being in startup challenges, XTC, or our own program which we run in India, but also dedicated interactions with startups to gain access to technology which we would need to partner with them when it is about creating new business, shaping these new future systems with creative and fast minds, and with that be able to, together to shape the future. And that is very much for us as NXP the motivation also why I am here on stage, why we are joining Startup Autobahn as a consequence with exactly that philosophy. The topics we are active in, and very shortly only in a nutshell as NXP to give you some glimpse, clearly radar, CMOS-driven radar in the automotive space where we are market leader, processing and networking in the car, and quite some interactions ongoing and discussions ongoing, and how is this changing? Well, now this nice old analog thingy, a car, is being disrupted and ending up in the digital space with all what that means to the product itself, the value chains around. Electrification be a topic, battery management, motor control, these type of topics. Lumped together, IoT and industrial, very low power consuming devices for security, for processing, as well as innovations on the fab floor. And the last two ones I wanted to shortly mention is in the communication space with ultra-wideband, not only ability that you send communication back and forth, but actually that you can measure distance and direction, which gives very, very interesting possibilities for new solutions, for new use cases, for driving innovations. And lastly, 6G, yeah, it's more bandwidth, that's good, but also here topics like sensing come in, because in the frequencies around 100 gig, there's a lot of new things you can be doing there. What I wanted to do is invite you to play with us. A bit driven by Corona and suddenly not being able to travel, suddenly not being able to be on the industry fairs, we developed quite an extensive technology showroom, over 50 demos, where we show in a system context what kind of interesting things can be done with our products. I would like to invite you to go to showroom.nxp.com, play with it, and let's use that as an interaction basis and see what we together can do for the future and how we can shape it together. In that sense, an invitation to play with us. Let's get creative, let's be creative together. Let's inspire each other, and in the end, be able to advance technology and even more so advance society. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to many more personal interactions here with you.